Now, just keep on.
Give me a mic. Well, I've got a mic.
You're up.
Okay, you can turn it down.
Up.
You can turn it
muted.
Welcome to another of our Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. Mother Nature's sharing her beauty with us out these windows. Oh my goodness, where else can you watch a luncheon on great yachting topics with this background? Holy moly. Let's see, a few housekeeping items. We want to acknowledge Vice Commodore Paul the Man Heineken. Here's Paul, who coached the the California University of California Cal sailing team to its first entry or its first appearance in the national championship since 1996. Paul, good on you, Paul. Exactly. And we want to introduce the first female Commodore in the history of the St. Francis Yacht Club, our Commodore, Teresa Brandner. Teresa.
Thank you, Ron. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. We love this event, and also want to welcome both members and guests who are in the room. We have a lot of representation from U.S. Sailing. That's great to see. And I think our sailing IQ doubled in the last hour. Way up, definitely. And I also would like to welcome those who are viewing online. We have a strong online presence. We love that you're interested in hearing what we have to say. And we also would welcome, I think you can ask questions online, but most importantly, let's welcome our guest, Malcolm Paige.
Thanks, Commodore. Few comments on our future speakers. Next week, the head of 3DI design at North Sail will be here, Bill Pearson, to talk all about 3D molding and, fiber placement. What are we thinking about those to make boats go fast? He'll explain why all those kind of issues allow us to have incredible sail designs. On the 30th of May, Janice Carew will be here. She and her family sailed or attempted to sail around the world. And the net result is they had an incredible adventure. She's written a couple of books, and her son will be here. One of her two sons became a professional sailor. He'll talk all about how important this adventure was for her. On 6th of June, Carlo Fiorini will be here, and he will talk all about rowing from Norway to Iceland. Who's done that? Okay. I just thought I'd ask. Bob Devlin, by contrast, didn't race Grand Prix race cars on the Marina Green, but he'll talk about when they did in 1915. And then noted naturalist Michael Ellis will be here to talk all about the Mojave Desert, which once was a lake. He'll talk all about that adventure. Chris Ray will be here to talk all about Africa in June. In July, we'll have the president and chief scientist of Environmental Associates to talk all about why the bay is getting cleaner, why we have whales in the bay and porpoises in the bay. And way out in the Big Boat Series time on the 12th of September, we will have Daniel Forrester come and talk to us about the world of a yachting photographer and why that's of interest to him and everybody else in his life. And so a little bit about our speaker today. Lots of people dream about going to the Olympics. Lots of people think what an incredible objective it might be. We're going to get to hear today from a person who's been there, won 2 gold medals, and he didn't just come by himself today. He brought an incredible team of folks with us. So before we hear more about Malcolm, I want to just acknowledge that our speaker today brought a total, including himself, of 10 members of the U.S. sailing Olympic team and staff. So wonderful. Thank you for coming in force. Thank you for coming in force. And we will have a little bit about our speaker. At age 6, he started sailing on a little Flying 11. And by age 15, he had decided that he wanted to win a world championship and go to the Olympics. In 2008, he achieved the objective of winning a gold medal. It took him 17 years from the first decision to go to the Olympics to win a world championship and go to the Olympics in 2004. They were odds-on favorites to him, and they didn't do it. As he put it, they choked. In 2008, they came back, and in Beijing stood atop the podium, winning his first of 2 gold medals. When we think about honors that he's accepted, he really loves 2012 in London when he was honored with the carrying the flag for the whole country of Australia into the Olympic Stadium, an incredibly big moment to him. In his life, the next biggest was the birth of his first daughter, and they're expecting another baby now, but his daughter was born in 2015. In 2016, he was elected to the Australian Sports Hall of Fame, one of only about 10 sailors in the whole Hall of Fame of sports. And then he was selected to be chief of U.S. sailing in 2017, the beginning of the year 2017, to really improve America's opportunities and chances at the Olympics. And so to tell us all about why we want to be paying more attention to what's happening in San Francisco, we should welcome our speaker who is about to move to San Francisco on the occasion of the sailing. Incredible activities are going to be happening on Treasure Island. Please welcome 7-time world champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, Malcolm Paige.
Thanks, Ron. I think you make me sound better than I am. It's really great to be here. I love this city. I have fond memories of this place. And I do remember in 2005 competing in a world championship straight out here, and obviously coming away with the title was obviously doesn't always leaves good memories about a place. But you know, growing up from a place called Sydney, which to me is a miniature version of San Francisco, I really do love this town and can't wait to move here. I must apologise. I do have a cold at the moment, and that brings out my nasally Australian accent even more so. All my friends back at home keep telling me I'm sounding very American now, so if it wasn't for the cold, I'm sure you wouldn't have even noticed. Before we get into the presentation, I think it'd be really nice to introduce, I guess, my colleagues that I have here today. I'm going to start off with I would say almost the least important. I'll work our way up. So I'm number one, at the bottom. Jim Campbell, our Chief Business Officer for Olympics. At least you're not the bottom, Jim. Meredith Brody, Olympic Manager. As I always say, Meredith is the heart and soul of this team. She is incredible, incredible. If you've ever spoken to her, you'll understand why. Kate Drummy is our Olympic Coordinator. Martha Fortin works in our marketing department and commercial. Will Rickinson, our communications manager. You don't need to get to know Will too much. This is his third last day in the job. He's been working with the team for 6 years, so obviously a long member. But he's about to go and work with American Magic, so he's not completely lost from the family. But he's off to, I hope, greener pastures. So well done to Will. Who's American Magic? It's the America's Cup team that's coming out of New York Yacht Club, obviously headed up by Hapforth and the DeVos family. So it's exciting where that's going, and hopefully, USA can win the cup back. I've heard that one. I'm old enough to remember that one. We have an amazing partner in the US Olympic Committee. They have, and I. Somebody like Meredith's about to speak to this more because she's been around longer, but they have been growing their support of our sport. Obviously, sailing has the opportunity to win 10 Olympic medals, and we're going to dive into where some of our underperformances are. And they've been growing with us, certainly in the time that I've been here, for a year and a quarter. It's already over a year and a quarter, year and a third in the job, and it's going from strength to strength. So we've got Meredith Miller here from our sports performance team. And also we've got Tom Mistel, who works on the USOC's foundation and is the ambassador to the sport of sailing. And now we get to the cool people, the athletes. We've got Luke Muller here, who is a fin sailor. Him and Kayla have trained together, but Luke, although he's originally from Florida, does call California and San Francisco home now. He's currently put pause on his Stanford degree to make sure he turns every stone over in this quad for Tokyo 2020, and is currently living here in the Bay in 4 wheels, in a van called Bessie. We have Kayla Payne, obviously a local to San Francisco. And of course, the lone Olympic medalist from Rio 2016 with that bronze medal that he won in quite an epic struggle, successful week for him. And if you haven't heard that story, corner him before he leaves. Also, we've got Paige Raley, who's a 2-time Olympian and sails the laser radial. And Paige has just come back for some time off since Rio and starting to hit her strides. She's just got directly flown from France to San Francisco for the last 2 days of camp that we've had, plus this event. And Paige came away with 2 medals from those 2 regattas that she competed in Europe. So with a bronze medal at the World Cup Series here, and then backing it up with a silver medal at the Radial Europeans. So it was a great effort from Paige. And of course, these 3 athletes are beneficiaries of St. Francis Sailing Foundation. So that's obviously really important for them to be here today to say thank you to all you, and of course, thank you to what you do for the whole US sailing team. But also, we have another legend in the room from an athlete standpoint. We've got Pam Healy, Olympian from '92. And of course, a bronze medalist as well. And I know she also does a lot of work around the Bay Area and with this yacht club, etc., etc. Too many to list. So it's really cool to be here today, and thanks for having me. I sort of wanted to break into 3 areas, and I know sailing group always wants to know a bit about my background and where I'm from and how I fell in love with the sport. And then, of course, we're going to dive into, where we are in the Olympic scene and where we're trying to go, and where we're not only going to be going for this quad, but obviously beyond. And when you think about the Los Angeles 2028 Olympic Games, it's not far away. It's only 10 years. I know the young athletes in the room might think that's ages, but for us grey-haired people, it's not long at all. And then, of course, I want to dive into what's happening in the Bay Area here, and the certainly one of the main reasons why I'm moving into the Bay Area in 2.5 weeks' time, and I've got to go home and pack the house, so that's going to be scary. But so my background: I'm obviously from Australia, but Sydney born and bred. So you can see that top arrow there is, that was where my grandparents had a house. So some of my first memories as a kid was on that Lane Cove River. And I remember going down to that house every Friday afternoon and of course on weekends and hanging out there with the family. They had a beautiful purple barbecue that we cooked dinner. And I remember if you cast a little bit to the left off the wharf, you had a pretty good chance to catch a bream, which was always a great fish to eat. And when I was 8 years old, which basically coincided with me getting into the sport, we moved to Des Moines. And as you can see, that bottom arrow there, that is got great views of Sydney Harbour Bridge and the city. So that really cemented my love for this sport. And obviously having access to a 6-foot drop hard wall into the water made it relatively easy as well. And I came from a non-sailing family. So my mum and dad didn't sail. They knew nothing about the sport. It was my oldest brother's fault. He had a friend at school, a mate at school, who sailed, and he came home one day and said, "I want to get a Flying 11, a type of boat." So it was that stage when supportive parents that we ended up getting a boat, and it was when I was 6 years old. My first sailing experience was tied to the wharf of my grandparents' property there in Lane Cove River, and the 2 older Mina brothers grabbed me, arm wrestled me. Not only was I skinny back then, but I was also short, so I didn't have much chance. It threw me in the boat. It half swamped, bawled my eyes out, hated the experience. But 2 years later, you couldn't get me out of the boat. So this sort of gives a little bit of history of those 3 types of boats, are sort of my upbringing. I started off in that snub-nosed, you'd almost say it's a souped-up Optimus, because it's got 3 sails and 2 people. But it's a boat called a Manly Junior. It was designed in the northern beaches of Sydney, and it's very much I would say, an East Coast Australian boat. But that's where I cut my teeth. It was starting in a Manly Junior and then progressed into a Flying 11 in the top right. I've got to say, those little Flying 11s, they were originally designed as a skiff training boat, and they do really respond like a skiff. Some of the best feelings of rides that I've had would be in the boat like that, and I wish that was me in that photo, but we do remember many rides like that. And then I did jump into the skiffs, and I did the Grand Prix circuit. Those who are old enough would remember that 30 minutes show of a lot of swearing and crashing. I did the last year of that circuit before it came off the TV. And as you can see by that Prudential boat, that wasn't me, but I spent a lot of time doing that. Nose diving and capsizing. I've got the chipped teeth and the scars to prove it from some of those crashes. So I sort of did all that before I jumped into the Olympic world. And I was 25 years old, and it was 1997, and the Sydney Games were only 3.5 years away. And I always knew I had that burning ambition to go on to try to have a go to Olympic Games. And I thought, hometown, why not make this the one? So, and I'd been a skipper most of my life, and I remember looking at the size of me and looking at the type of boat that I wanted to sail and went, geez, I better lose weight and learn how to crew. Because if I was going to sail the 470, there was no chance I was going to be able to steer. So when the 4 quads, obviously those 4 Olympics that I tried to go to the Olympics, I felt like I had the full experience from an athlete standpoint. At the Sydney Games, we missed selection. So we got second in the Olympic trials. So I learned what it was like not to go to Olympic Games. The Athens Olympics, we were world number one for the 2.5 years leading into the Olympics. We won that World Championships that year. We were a hot favourite. But not knowing and not being to Olympic Games before, as Ron so articulately explained, we choked. We got it wrong. And although going into the last race, we were in 5th place and we did have a chance at the bronze medal, the worst we could do was 12th, and we nailed it. We got 12th. We jumped the start, got OCS'd, got to the first mark and saw the AUS. Got the early shower. So that was my first Olympic Games experience. But then, we're looking at what do we do next? Do we go and try to get it right? Beijing was going to be very difficult for us. The partner I was starting with, Nathan Wilmot, he was extremely tall. He was 6 foot tall and had to sit around about, the 60 kilogram mark and put that into pounds. It's 140, early 140 pounds that he had to maintain himself at to be a skipper. For myself, I'm 6'1" tall, and I had to maintain myself around the normal events, the sort of high 150 pound mark. But going to Beijing, it was a terrible Olympic venue for sailing. It had a standard sea breeze of 6 to 8 knots. Of course, occasionally a typhoon or an edge of a typhoon would come through and you would get breeze, but that was very rare. So all classes, all the athletes were reducing their weight. But Nathan and I were at a disadvantage because we were very tall and quite big for the boats already. And we considered, do we do something different for Beijing and sail another boat? But at the same time, we thought our bread and butter was in this boat, so we continued with that. But we managed to get our weight. Nathan got himself down to 133 pounds, if I remember rightly, 6 foot tall. But I had it easy. I got down to 145 for that event. And even though we got ourselves that light, we only GP'd in 1.5 of the 11 races. And one of those races was actually the medal race. But thankfully, we had such a phenomenal event. We mathematically had won the gold medal before that medal race. So we knew 48 hours before the medal race that we were going to get it. And it actually really helped because we could party 2 nights before the night before. And but it also took the pressure off. And I know because you guys are sailors, I'll talk about our results. Apart from our drop, the best result we got those 10 races, or 9 of those 10 races, was a 3rd, and the worst we got was a 7th, just to show how consistent we were. And we ended up 22 points ahead before that medal race. So we went out in the medal race and we'll just relax, started on port, ducked the fleet, tacked on a few shifts. Next thing you know, we were leading. Not sure what to do then, but we spent most of our time watching the battle for the 3 other boats to find out who got the other 2 medals. And it was a cool way to go out on that one. And then no Australian sailor had ever won 2 gold medals. So Victor, my coach, suggested, why don't you try to be the first? I was 36 years old in Beijing, so I thought, okay, do I do it, do I not? And I actually, looking back a few months before the games, I knew I still had the desire. It was still burning inside. So I said, let's go to 1 more games. And Nathan had already stopped and he's decided well before the games that was his last hurrah. And so I partnered with a new partner and then built a new team and then went on again to try to defend that gold medal. And I think it's hard to know exactly why, because obviously you get smart, or you should be getting smarter year by year from your mistakes. But Victor always talked about that last year of your campaign to dominate. And you can look at a lot of examples of athletes that have done it. You can even just look at last quad. Giles Scott did it in the Finn. Peter and Blair from New Zealand did it in the 49er. And you go on, there's a few teams that just dominate like that. But Matthew Belcher and I managed to do that in that London quad, and we had 9 events in that last calendar year leading to the Olympic Games. We We got second in the first one year out. And then we won every event right through, which included 2 World Championships, the European Championships, and obviously the Olympic Games at the very end. We didn't win it before the medal race. We had to go in and fight hard. And like many of us understand now, it was against the Brits. But thankfully, we came out on top. And that's one thing I have learnt with my time in the USA, is that Americans love beating the Brits just as much as the Australians do. So that leads really well into some information a little bit later on. But I guess one of the other reasons I've got this chart here, I just talked about me as being as an athlete. But the Australian sailing team, the AST, went through an interesting phase that as well. So 2000 was obviously home games, the first time since 1952. So there was a lot more effort being pushed into it. And I guess some level of professionalism started within the Australian sailing team. Things went really well in Sydney. They ended up with 4 Olympic medals, 2 gold, a silver and a bronze. So it went very well. Then straight after those games, the Australian Institute of Sport didn't recognise sailing as one of their sports. They said, well, we better get on that bandwagon because they went really well in Sydney. So we became a Australian Institute of Sport. And I remember we used to say to them all the time, AIS, Australian Institute of Sport, you don't understand our sport. We're different. We're different. So we spent the next 4 years telling them that and how don't treat us like other sports and we can't learn from them because we're different. And we went to Athens in a really good situation, probably no different to Sydney, with X amount of world champions, X amount of world number ones, and with X amount of opportunities to win medals. And we came out with zip, donuts. So it really put the Australian sailing hierarchy, and it was actually the athletes who the first got together and said after that games, we said, we need a review. We need to work out what went wrong. So the president at the time of Australian Sailing got together an independent guy to run a panel to interview everybody in it and do a review on what went wrong and what had to change. And they made a thing called the gold medal plan. It was a roadmap of what to do. And then from that experience, we built the team. And to me, although Beijing was great, they came back with 3 medals. But to me, London was the highlight. We really worked hard on creating a team, making sure all the individual classes worked together. But not only that, also making sure that the whole Australian sailing team worked together. What I was strong at, maybe someone else was weak at, and vice versa. And that went not only with the athletes, but also to the coaches and to the administrators. So we really worked hard to make a tighter team, even if it was within the individual classes or even just with the great Australian sailing team. And we opened our eyes and ears to other sports. And we listened to the Australian Institute of Sport. And we took on their advice and adapted and changed. And to me, the London was the top of the wave. We went in with 3 strong gold medal chances and another strong medal chance. And we came away with the 3 solid golds, basically hitting par. And then the women's match racing came super close, went down to the 5th race, and they lost to Spain, but silver medal. So came away with 4 medals. And then the Australians beat the Brits in their home waters in Weymouth. Got the #1 sailing country. But in addition, Australia Olympic team had a terrible Olympic Games there. So Australian sailing came back as the #1 sport, winning the most medals. And that doesn't happen very often. When you think about swimming, that can win, 24 or 32 Olympic medals. Or you have a Michael Phelps that can, beat most countries individually. But so it was a great effort for the sailing team to do that. And that system has been rolling on, and now they're one of the strongest countries. So I'm a little weird. Not only did I really enjoy being an athlete, but I also enjoyed the administration side of sport. And I guess that's why I'm here in this role today as well. But while I was being an athlete, I worked in various athletes' commissions along the way, with Australian Sailing, with the AIS, the Australian Institute of Sport, and with World Sailing. And actually at World Sailing, I was there for 8 years, and the last 4 years I was actually chairperson of that committee, and spent a lot of time going to annual conferences, where there was one last week, and going to board meetings, and sitting on the board as a non-voting athlete representative. And it was great just to get into the backside of sport and how it works. Also, when Australia did that review after Athens 2004, they decided that we needed an Australian captain, needed a captain within the team, and I was I was the male representative. Obviously, I couldn't take the other category, but we had two captains, male and a female, and I held that position for the 8 years until I retired after the London Games. And after a few years of working out what I wanted to do after the London Games, I decided that I definitely wanted to work in sport. And I went to World Sailing, moved the whole family. My wife was 28 weeks pregnant, moved to the other side of the world, and went to a foreign country, certainly a foreign country from a medical standpoint, and gave birth to our first daughter, but moved to the UK and worked for World Sailing, which was at times very difficult job, certainly leading into the Rio Games with all the well-publicised problems around the water. And but also it just gave me, I guess, more knowledge of the back workings of this sport, and it also worked on my resilience. But in that time too, I was staying very well connected to the Olympic scene, and the Australian Olympic Committee actually asked me to be the chef de mission to the inaugural Pacific Games, the first time that Australia and New Zealand was allowed to go to the Pacific Games, which is your Pan Am equivalent in that part of the world, in Oceania. And Australia was only allowed to go in four sports. And I was the captain of that team. And I think from memory, we had 54 athletes, and we came away with 56 medals, which was very cool. And only 2 athletes didn't get a medal, which was a pretty amazing effort. And then I remember ringing up the chef de mission to the Olympic Games for 2016, Kitty Chiller, and said to her, "Kitty, it's over to you. Beat that." So, but that was some great experiences, and it's many of the reasons why I think it prepared me for this job. And this job to me is the ideal after athlete life job that I could do. It's my dream job. I love it, and I'll get into why I think America is some of the great opportunities. So moving into the Olympic scene in this job, here's a quick little snapshot, 14 Olympics snapshot of US Olympic sailing. And the first bar, so the blue bar within each of the categories, is how many events or how many medals were on offer, and the orange bar was how many USA achieved. So 1964 was a standout year. That was held in Tokyo. That was the Tokyo Olympic Games, and the sailing was held in Inoshima. So the exactly same venue that we're going to be going to in a two and a third year away. So end of July in 2020. You roll on to 1984. So that was Los Angeles Olympic Games, and the sailing was held out of Long Beach, the exact same venue that the 2028 Olympic Games is going to be. And sailing came away from USA came away with 7 of 7 medals there. And of course, 92 was a great Games in Barcelona, where Pam won her bronze, where USA got 9 of the 10 medals that were on offer. But then it started to decline. And why? Why did it start to decline? For those who remember, back in the late 80s into the early 90s, there were amateur rules within the IOC. And by the early mid-90s, the IOC completely abolished those amateur rules and made it fully professional. So that's when the dream team could start to go to the Olympic Games, when the professional tennis players could start to go back to the Olympic Games. And that's when, I guess, many sailing teams around the world started to professionalise themselves. The Brits were, and still are, the gold medal standard. They started first. Obviously, their lotto funding came on in 1997 as well, so they had a lot of fuel for their system, and they started to really build things from there. And when you do a little snapshot of the last 4 Olympic Games, obviously you can see Brits at the top there with 19 medals from the last 4 Olympic Games in sailing. And USA is down in 9th position, or 9th, 10th position. with only 5. So at the moment, the Brits are doing 4-to-1 ratio on us in medals. So we're matching Brazil and Argentina, a couple of those countries like that. But it's not all bad. This is historical. For the last, how many Olympic Games? We're up to 31, 32 Olympic Games. This is total medals and ever for sailing. And USA is still on top at 60 medals, but only just. The Brits are at 58. So they're coming. Tokyo is not far away, and they're coming. If they keep that 4-to-1 ratio, obviously they're going to leapfrog us, not only on how many gold medals, but also on total medals. So that's what we're trying to stop. We don't have much time, and it takes a long time to build a great athlete. But we're working hard on it. And here's a little snapshot of, I guess, a professional system and comparing it across a couple of different countries. So there's sort of 3 areas of this chart. The top line is your medals from the last 2 Olympic Games, USA being the left-hand column, and then comparing it to Britain, Australia, New Zealand, and the Dutch, Netherlands, and how many medals and what colour they got. And then the next 7 lines sort of show components of a system. And as you can see under the USA column there, we have a lot more white in those little balls than some of those other countries. So obviously they've got a great system that's supporting their athletes and leading their athletes in the right direction. And then in the bottom 2 lines, from all our intelligence that we can work out, there's sort of the numbers converted into US dollars that they received in the last quad and spent, and what was the source. So obviously you can see there's a high percentage of government support for all those teams. And the Brits at 55 million for the quad, US dollars, was supporting the team, and USA was at 14.5. And the examples go on. New Zealand beat USA from a funding standpoint. So it gives you a little bit of idea what we're up against and what we're trying to change. I'm basing my time in this role on 3 things. And this is in order. We need to get the right culture. And I remember speaking to JJ Federer, Pam Healy's partner, talking about the 92 games. She said they were really young there. They were very green, their first Olympic Games. Yeah, sure, they had a chance to win a medal, but they weren't by any means certain. And she said the whole team just started to win. And it was infectious. It was intoxicating. And then the next thing you know, they just felt like they were empowered to do it themselves and came away with winning a medal. And this spirit, in many ways, has been lost in the, I guess, the fabric or the culture of the young sailors that are coming through. We've got to build that up again. And there's some of the points that how we're going to do that. You know, obviously Caleb winning that medal in Rio is going to help when they're training with him on Treasure Island and rubbing shoulders with him for that next generation. Paige bringing back those 2 fresh medals from Europe at the moment is going to start to filter down into these other sailors. And then, of course, across the team, start to share that with the other athletes that are hopefully going to be primed and ready in 2020 to do that job. And the second point is really more how we're going to do it. We've got to focus on excellence in everything we do. To me, the athlete's the most important thing. And then how do we influence them the best? And to me, it's getting the world's best coaches, number 1. And because they're the ones with them every day. They're the ones following them out in the water every day and helping them grow up as people. So when they're about to go and realise their dreams when they get to the Olympic Games. But also in this day and age, one of the other things that's so important is to make it sustainable. Because whatever you learn this quad, you can take into next quad and so on. You can get smarter and make a library and build on these things. So as I said, everything we do, we put the athletes in the middle. This is what they're aiming for, obviously a gold medal. And we're going from this old model of where it was very much athlete-driven. They're the ones that decided the campaign. They're the ones that went out and made a budget, did the fundraising, chose their coach, decided on their program they were going to do. We're going to flip it to a system. So we'll have the world's best coaches leading these athletes, showing them the way to train, hopefully across multiple quads. So that if they do get it wrong, they'll learn from that experience and grow up a bit like I did at my first Olympic Games, and then be able to go on and learn what you did wrong and learn from that mistake. And it's very much the system that the Brits do. The coaches are fully employed. They know they have a job after each quad. They're working with their number 1 athlete or number 2 or number 3, which are normally all in the top 10 in the world. But then also they've got 4, 5, 6 they've got half an eye on, that they know they're going to be ready in 2 quads or 3 quads time. So this, in a country like America, so big, so much talent that I've seen in the youths, with the world's biggest economy, and in this city is the perfect example of it, having majority of the technology companies let out of here, you've got all the components of a perfect system. Now we've just got to create this to make it sustainable. So we've got a little video here, video 1. So this is a little video to sort of showcase some of the system, the structure that we're trying to build behind the team. Go, Tom. Everything I try to do every day is for the athlete, to remove obstacles, to help them with their preparation, help them work towards their ultimate goal of winning an Olympic medal. I decided I was ready to move to the next phase of my life after being an athlete, and this way I get them to feel what I felt, hopefully, to stand on the top of that. Some of the logistic problems we have to deal with. That was a beautiful typhoon in Enoshima, Tokyo last year. They were unloading containers without trailers, borrowing trolleys, help them getting them down work to the water, towards their ultimate goal of winning obviously raining hard and blowing hard. It also talks about Meredith Brody, why does she phase my life after being an athlete, what she's trying to do this way, get them to feel what I felt. Talks about Dr. Chris Ellis, stand on the top of that podium and really feel who is our PT, lead medical operator
Malcolm, with all of his experience coming in as a 2-time gold medalist, is really inspiring to all the athletes. We really trust him a lot in his leadership and where he's guiding us on this path.
Talks a little bit. All the athletes are certainly talking from a point of view of what
having
the team,
the athletes surrounded by resources,
what that management is doing
is
for
our
them.
focus. The athletes are number one.
We can always,
and
I guess, go
support
back
for
to
the
it at the end.
coaches
Tom,
is
if
right
we
there
sort
with
out the
it.
problem.
Our sport,
Happy for me to roll on?
we have a lot of logistical challenges. We are moving the boats around the world with a full team behind the team to make the team run.
Well, he's we've still got the video.
Pride
up
to me is just.
I know the computer up here is good. Perfect. Thank you. So we're moving on to the third section of the talk, and who likes the new logo for Fast USA? Yeah. It was confirmed, I think, 6 p.m. 2 nights ago. So this is very fresh, very fresh. I'm sure many people can see the Olympic colours in there, but I hope we haven't broken any. I'm looking at Meredith Muller at the moment. I hope we haven't broken any rules there. As Peter Stoneberg said yesterday when he was presenting to the athletes, it looks like a really confused start line with boats going everywhere. And obviously right in the middle there is a star from the American flag. So, and here's a representation of all the logos of the different groups that are pulling this all together around the Bay Area. So we've got TISC, Treasure Island Sailing Centre, obviously the St. Francis Sailing Foundation that represents the whole Bay Area, the sailing team itself, and now the new logo of FAST, which is obviously the new entity that is going to be living out on Treasure Island. So as Peter always says, who knows what FAST stands for? Top of the class. Well done. And if you didn't know, it's at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So there's a quick little mission of what it's trying to achieve. I won't dwell on that too much because obviously you can all read and you'll be getting back onto Tom's. You can't read it anyway. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the mission, develop a world-class, year-round centre of excellence for advanced sailing skills and technology. Partner with St. Francis Foundation, TISC, US sailing team, and local technology companies to take sailors from puddles to podium. Where is it? It's obviously that block of land right in the middle of the Bay Bridge. And San Francisco, as you all know so well, is an amazing place for a lot of microclimates. So obviously in one area, you can get multiple different conditions. Obviously straight out here, the city front, it's going to be the windiest place in the bay. And depending on the current, maybe pretty choppy as well. You go under the bridge and it's about 10 knots less than here. In that, I'm not sure what the circle's called. Is it Alameda Circle down there? No, under the bridge. South. Is that South Bay? South Bay, rightio. That makes sense. And of course, the Berkeley Circle is, a couple of knots less than here, and world-class venue, and obviously a lot of international events there, and relatively so, not a lot of current, because it's quite shallow over there. And then, of course, you've got the French Riviera area, which is a little bit lighter wind, where Caleb lives, and you can get a suntan there too, I've learnt in my time here. And of course, offshore, it might be a little lighter, but there's big waves out there, and whales, I hear, just recently. So yesterday, we actually took the sailing team athletes out to Treasure Island and had lunch at the new container restaurant on Treasure Island called Mercy. And we thought that was a really appropriate place to update the athletes because it was a container restaurant, and exactly what our construction will be on Treasure Island once we get city approval and get that built. And here's a little snapshot of the future of what Treasure Island's going to look like. That's going to be the major sort of ferry terminal, and from what I understand, a 30-minute ferry. Every 30 minutes there'll be a ferry going to and from the city to Treasure Island. And here's a little snapshot of, obviously the blue circle is the current venue of Treasure Island Sailing Centre. The black one being the permanent one, which will be somewhere to 4 to 5 years away with the development of the island. And the green one is basically the temporary site that we have approval for now, but where there's a bit of works to be done, so we're going to be a few months away before it'll be constructed. And one of the other cool things is that little white bubble up top there. And to me, this is a level of support that it's never really been done before in USA, especially. Is being able to try to get housing scenario for these athletes, to make this their home, to make this a great, as we all know, a great place to start, but also a way to make a difference for their training. So that's Carissa's, for those who know her, Carissa Harris, that's her finger in that picture. But you can actually see from this picture, obviously as a reference point, there's the pier, and then in the bottom left-hand corner is the current site of the Treasure Island Sailing Centre. That car park area there, that sort of triangular car park area in the middle, is going to be the future permanent site. And then that, where the finger's pointing right on the edge there, that triangular grass with the bitumen centre strip, and then the adjacent triangular bit of grass that's just out of the picture will be the temporary site until the permanent one comes online. So as you can see, we're going to be getting our athletes training as well, dragging their boats from that finger point all the way down to Treasure Island Sailing Centres to launch at that existing ramp. So not only are we going to be making him sail on the water, but also getting him fit on the shore. Better make sure you guys have good wheels in those fin trolleys. And here's a little snapshot of the futuristic or schematics of what it possibly could look like. Well, certainly, the majority of it will look like this. There might be some minor changes, but there's going to be a new launching ramp with crane area adjacent to the pier, and obviously directly adjacent to that permanent site. The existing site down there, Treasure Island Sailing Centre, is going to have a new wharf built with lots of boats and storage area down there. So it's going to come a long way, and it's going to become a world-class, I think, regatta venue. But not only that, a home for the sailing team, a home for them to, I guess, build the skills they need for their Olympic dreams, and obviously basing it in San Francisco does a lot of wonderful things as well. Not only is it a permanent place out here on the West Coast, and I know this is all new to me, and I only hear the rumours since being in this role, but it's also a stake in the ground from US Arning's perspective, having infrastructure and having people out here on the West Coast, because I'll be moving here in 2.5 weeks' time. And not that we advertise this too much, because I see no reason for it from a performance standpoint. So you have to cut this out of your video, Tom. But we've got our technology director also living in the Bay Area. And he moved here from a successful country. We headhunted him from another country to head that up. And he moved his whole family here, 2 school-age daughters, to live in this city and obviously head that up because San Francisco made so much sense for this reason. What did we get given just after the last America's Cup? Team USA was very kind to US Sailing. They gave us their base that they used out in Bermuda. And there's a little aerial shot of it, that the centre one there with the American flag on the top was the base that we have received that will be built on Treasure Island. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Fully professional kitchen in there. Not going to be much use to me. I'm no good in a kitchen. I'm better with the washing up. I'm sure it has a sink in there. But it's a fully professional kitchen that they used to run their whole team out of. Feed, I think, in the vicinity of 100 mouths a day, 3 times a day. So that's going to be there for our athletes. And, of course, to work with the Treasure Island Sailing School, something that they're going to be using. So not only are they going to be using these obviously new and great facilities, but they're also going to be sitting down and having lunch, rubbing shoulders with the Paige, Luke, and Caleb. And it's going to be, through osmosis, inspiring these kids for the next generation. Here's a couple of more snapshots of the other containers and the offices that are within this, and there's one of the whole open area. This one's going to be hard to read as well, isn't it? Now, that's just a quick little snapshot of, I guess, that mission from puddles to podium, and a couple of the areas and ways that they can stem along. And it's pulling together, I guess, more or less all the areas of our sport. Of course, the Australian sailing team might be the podium part of the puzzle. But then you've got, reach education. You've got different technology, working with universities on projects, big coaching seminars. There'll be college sailing. There'll be all these different areas that we know and love in our sport that we're about to use this facility and be able to go through it to strengthen our sport right across the board. And here's a little, I guess, a snapshot of the whole country and about how we're trying to build a network of these around the country. There is only going to be 2 national training centres. So San Francisco, or Treasure Island, and obviously the existing one in Miami, the long-standing one there. But then also we're going to have youth training sites, or what we probably call Olympic development training sites, hopefully spread all around the country to create these networks and pathways, not only for these talented sailors to know that they can train in other places, but also know how they can progress through this sport. And also going back to that point of sharing knowledge, having a pathway to share knowledge and grow our sport at all the different levels. Here's a couple of snapshots of all of them coming together on Treasure Island, and if I had a little bit more time, I would have actually got the photos live from yesterday of the athletes and the 8-year-olds at Treasure Island Sailing School having lunch together down there, which was wonderful. And here's a snapshot which of me doing a backflip versus Kevin Burnham. And I guess why I like this is obviously Kevin and Paul won that gold medal in 2004, the ones that we were hot favourite for. And I remember learning a lot from them about how to campaign and how to, I guess, learn from all the mistakes that I made. They didn't choke at the Olympic Games. They'd never won their gold medal. They'd won medals, each of them individually, silver each before. But to win that gold obviously meant a lot to them, but they achieved that. And then obviously fast forwarding to was that 8 years later of me in London, 2012, at 40 years old, still being able to do a backward somersault. My niece, certainly at that time, she's not anymore, but she was very much into gymnastics and used to compete state level back in Australia. And the first thing she said to me is, "Malcolm, that was terrible. Your toes weren't pointed, and your arms are out of synchronisation." So that's the end before we move to the Q&A section. But we've got that one video to play. So this video goes into a little bit more about the athletes. Why do they do it? Why do they sacrifice? What is in it for them? And why do they do what they do? Go for it, Tom.
I'm a big believer that you still have to conquer yourself. You can't end up on top of the podium unless you have full control of your mental state and you've pushed yourself to your limits physically. I'm a big believer that you still have to conquer yourself. You can't end up on top of the podium unless you have full control of your mental state and you've pushed yourself to your limits.
This one's a little bit more difficult to talk through because it really is talking about the athletes talking about the process they go through, and how they've got to push the envelope sometimes, and how they will make mistakes, and they've got to learn from those mistakes and grow up. They also talk about, and obviously a lot of these shots have been from Inoshima in Japan. And it goes into talking about when they hit their flow state. When does everything come together? When do the stars align? And what does it feel like?
For the playing field on which we compete.
And that's really the nutshell of that video.
Sailing so incredible.
We'll make sure they're all online for you guys after. I'd love you to go and listen to the real version, because the commentary, their words, I guess their words, what is so meaningful. And you have control where you're going. We can understand why they do that, why they make those so many sacrifices in life, missing their family and friends, obviously financial sacrifices,
guessing,
to go and try to realise this dream, and what is so special for them to hopefully represent their country and stand on top of that podium.
Growing as a person, I've become more confident and aware each day of this is how I operate.
This would have to be one of the best videos I think that the sailing team's ever put out. It's really cool. So do get back and do watch it.
In the flow, those times when you're out of the flow, and we see that all throughout our lives.
Tokyo, I think, is going to be an amazing venue as well. The Japanese
face your own shortcomings and
sailing is quite a popular sport in Japan.
In life,
sure, soccer, baseball do outrank it, but it does have a strong following in the country. Inoshima is a great venue. It's going to get mixed conditions. A sea breeze is, high single digits up to sort of mid-teens. But typhoons go through there very, very often. In 2017, they had 22 typhoons that went through. We had 2 there in the 10-day period that were there. One when we were unloading the container, second one when we were packing the container, of course. And the typhoon got so big last year, the first one that we were there for, the number 21 of the year. Meredith and I got a text from one of our athletes early in the morning saying, hey, our container's moved a little bit in the car park, which has a break wall as high as this building surrounding it from the Pacific Ocean side. And Meredith texts me directly and goes, what does Dave mean, the container moved? I said, it must have just moved a little. There'd be nothing. So anyway, the picture started to flow in, and we found out that all the containers, there's about 20 of them in the car park there, had been washed around the car park. The British container had been washed about 80 metres, 100 metres down, done a turn, went through the boom gate area, smacked a car, smacked the pay toll gates, and it ended up out on the main road. And all the other containers had washed around the car park and spun, and doors against other containers. None of them had flipped, but they had moved 10s and 20s of metres. It was an incredible thing to know. So that gives you an idea of how big the waves can get when a typhoon comes through. They went over the break wall and put that much water into the car park area. So it could deliver everything. And obviously with 22 typhoons last year, there is a very high chance that you'll get strong winds. Sometimes depends how they hit. It can be offshore and very flat water, but if it's onshore, it's going to be huge waves. Probably very similar to that footage that you would have seen off Rio when it was offshore. So I think it's going to be a great venue, and of course the Japanese are super organised. So some of the grief that I know Meredith and Kate would have felt going to Rio will hopefully not be there. But at the same time, it's a very expensive place to be. So we don't get it all our own way.
So welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, live from the St. Francis Yacht Club. Our speaker today is 7-time world champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and chief of the United States sailing team, Malcolm Paige. Welcome, Malcolm. Malcolm brought with him today 9 other members of the United States sailing team and staff, and you can spend time with him today during the luncheon, and then as well this evening, the local San Francisco IOD fleet, we've given boats, and they'll be all racing right in front of the club. All members of the team will be racing right in front of the club, and 5 IODs right afterwards. So you can come here, and the dinners this evening starting at 6:35.
Who's going to win, Ron?
Well, Malcolm, you said you'll only sail with me if we win.
Spot on.
Malcolm will be a guest driving youngster, and each of the Olympians will be guest driving one of the IODs. Also, as I ask questions, if you have a question of your own, and we welcome all questions from the audience, please stand over by John. Hold your mic up, John, and we will take a question from the audience. And Julia is taking questions online on our Facebook live stream, so that's a great thing, too. Malcolm, you've been to multiple Olympics, and you've won 2 of the big prize gold medals. Tell us, what are the characteristics that you see in a young person that tells you, yes, this person can make it? Talk a bit about this. First, we're going to talk about individuals, and then we're going to talk about teams. So first, individuals.
It's a great question. And I think about the sport of sailing, there's so many different characters and different ways to be successful. Probably some of the commonalities, though, would be, of course, there's hard work. That goes without saying. But I think most of the time it is the extra ones that are quite common are resilience. They're normally, I would say, very thoughtful, process-driven. And what I mean by that, you could almost to the point saying unemotional in their way they operate. So because everyone is going to make mistakes, but they are able to see the tree through the forest and work out what the exact problem is and address that problem to increase their performance. I say that word in particular because when you increase your performance, that's how you get a better result. And when you're able to, I guess, almost partition those different areas of our sport and address your weaknesses, that's when you're going to be able to bring a better opportunity together.
We have a question from the audience. Peter Stoneberg.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. And thank you, Malcolm, for your comments today. Fantastic. Many of the people in the room were involved with America One when we had the America's Cup Challenge out of St. Francis Yacht Club. And I know that they're now involved with U.S. Sailing and the ODP program. Can you tell us a little bit about...
What is ODP, Peter?
Olympic Development Program. And so can you tell us a little bit about what America One Foundation has been doing with U.S. Sailing?
Thank you, Peter.
So the Bay Area group has been leading the charge, especially, I would say, in Olympic rebirth. The America One board, which is obviously left over from that America's Cup campaign back in 2000, they've been big supporters of the Olympic movement, the Olympic sailing movement in this country for a very long time. But after the London Games, when USA was the first Olympic Games they went to where sailing got no medals, they came to US Sailing and said, why? Let's do a research, let's find out what is our biggest issue, and we would like to see if we can help on that. So through that process, they worked out that the youth, the pathways, was probably the biggest area that needed work. So that's how, Project Pipeline 24, so to 2024, 10-year project that was born on that day. And in 2014. And they also made a $5 million commitment across that 10 years. There were many commitments that US Sailing had to match, a level of match for that money to continue, which thankfully was achieved as well. And what that has done is set up a great, and obviously we just got through the fourth year, or now solidly into the fourth year of the Olympic Development Program, which is more the boots on the ground part of that project pipeline. And we're starting to see some great rewards from that. When you look at the Youth Worlds team from the last 3 years, USA has come away with 3 to 4 medals at each of those Youth World Championships. So it really just shows the quality of the youth, the talent that is in this country. So there is no reasons why we can use that as an excuse at an Olympic level. The talent is in this country. And that was something really big that America One Foundation took on. Go, Ron.
Another question from the audience. R.C. Keith.
Yeah, just a quick question and a comment. Have you ever had occasion to race and sail on the Olympic Circle at Barrenjoey?
Yes.
Good. I always thought that Barrenjoey had a way of raising men, or maybe boys into men or girls into... you talk about a protected amount of water we have here, and we do. They don't got no protected water on that Olympic Circle, I can tell you.
Without a doubt, we used to train from Middle Harbour, for those who know it, in Sydney Harbour, which gave us great, quick access to flat water, current, or offshore.
Yeah, we were doing business on the Pittwater.
Yep, up off Barrenjoey.
Our friends at the Royal Prince Alfred Yacht Club there. Yep. Yeah. And one other that we could spend at least 2 minutes talking about. I don't ever hear any discussion anymore about a so-called proper yacht in the Olympics. Some way or another to bring back into the Olympics a true keel, a true spinnaker pole. By way of illustration, perhaps something like a FAR 40. But to bring, in my lifetime, we started with Olympic yachting, and then we went to Olympic sailing, and then we went to something or other. I know what's important to you, really important. The money is in my generation, and it's available somewhere, but it needs to have a yacht, a true, really racing yacht. And thank you very much, and goodbye.
That was a very topical question, because earlier this week, I think it was Monday in London, was the World Sailing's mid-year conference, and they were discussing the 5 remaining events, so the 5 remaining medals for 2024, so for the Paris Olympic Games. 5 were already put in the bank, just to keep some stability within our sport. For those who, I don't know, but if they followed it closely, would realise US Sailing did put in a proposal, a slate, to, I think, really did answer some of those, that one part of that question that you answered there, but also other things that the ISU is asking of all sports. You must have not only gender equality from a head count standpoint at the Olympic Games, but also from a medal standpoint. Because sailing in 2020 will have gender equality from a head count, but they're not going to from a medal standpoint. Men will receive 5.5 medals, and women will receive 4.5. So by 2024, we have to get that in line. Sadly, US Sailing is only 2 votes from around the council, which is about 40 or 42 votes. Our bid didn't get up, and the proposed last 5 don't have a keel boat in it. And certainly learning about the landscape in USA, from a funding standpoint, I'm sure having a keel boat would have been really interesting. And I know I was personally very interested in that option that many people were talking about, which was the double-handed offshore long race. And we, in many ways, our sport is unique. Can you imagine if you're, I don't know, wrestling, and the IOC goes, you've got to have gender equality, and how hard it's going to be for them to achieve that. But in the sport of sailing, we can do that, and we can really showcase so many different areas. So I think some of these IOC pushes that have come down onto all sports is a great opportunity for our sport to showcase ourselves. Sadly, that wasn't voted in on Monday. So the proposed slate has all centreboard boats or boards. Some of the new ones that have been pushed in there, which I'm still not sure how this one works, but there is a double-handed singles event. So that means 2 boats, men and women. So I guess it's a bit like riding 2 different horses, but maybe scoring together. The formats and the type of equipment that were represented will be discussed between now and November and decided in the annual conference in Sarasota in the first full week of November. So we will know soon, by the end of this year, of what the equipment will represent those different events. But of course, the IOC still has the last say. So although that might be the World Sailing Council's opinion, we will see what the IOC does.
So, Malcolm, on the subject of individuals, give us a quick, short snapshot of the timeline of a quad Olympic campaign for an individual. We're going to talk about teams in a moment, but an individual, what's a quad campaign look like?
I'm going to answer that 2 ways. Sort of generally how a quad works, and then talk about some of our let's say 2020 strong opportunities.
Great.
So I would say the first quad, the first time that athletes really dive into it, is really just them experience what an Olympic cycle is like. The second quad is hopefully for them to maybe go to an Olympic Games and feel what that is like. And by the third quad is when they're really ready to win medals. Of course, there is exceptions. You know, Robert Scheid and Ben Ainsley. They started campaigning, went to the first Olympic Games and win medals. But there's not many of them out there. Caleb's a great example of someone who, in many ways probably batted above the average, was ahead of the curve. He's campaigned for 2 quads, seriously, and obviously missed on his first chance to go to Olympic Games, but got on his second, and then put his personal best down at the Olympic Games and came away with that bronze medal. And when you dive into the current team, I wouldn't say not all athletes have rolled on from the Rio quad, but we are very fortunate that there is many. And to me, there is 4 really strong classes that have strong medal chances. Obviously, we got the Finn. Caleb did it 2 years ago. So there's no reason why he or Luke can't do that again in 2 and a bit years' time. The radial squad is doing very well. Erika Reinecke has had a phenomenal 2017. Ended up winning the Rolex Yachtswoman of the Year for her efforts. She won in Japan very convincingly. And now Paige is back as a teammate and obviously just did very well winning those medals in Europe. So to me, the radial team is in a strong position as well. And then we dive into the NACRA 17. And the NACRA 17 is just gone foiling. So that was a very new class for Rio. With being mixed and with the sea foils, but they've done a retrofit on the boats and now they have L foils. So they will be high and hopefully most of the time dry, sailing around the course. Still mixed, but we've got 2 great teams and a few others backed up behind it, but 2 great teams in Bora Galari, who went to Rio, and obviously a couple-time Moth world champion, so he knows how to foil, with Helena Scutt, who's a member of this club as well, and Riley Gibbs, who is also a beneficiary of the foundation, St. Francis Sailing Foundation, and he's from Long Beach, but spends a lot of time in San Fran, sailing with Louisa Chafee, who went to Rio in the NACRA as well. So those 2 are training hard together and really working hard together, and I've got high hopes for the NACRA class with both those young talented foiler and now 1 quad inexperienced people. And in the last one is the 470 men. We all know Stu and Dave have got a huge amount of experience in that class and went very close in Rio with a 4th place. So if they can just find the extra little bit between now and then, and obviously that's a boat that I know well, so hopefully be able to help them go that little step further and get onto the podium. So they're the 4 really strong classes. And as we know in the sport of sailing, there's always a few others that can jump up. And there's quite a few that, with a lot of hard work, and hopefully there's enough time to make that projection.
So in the 4 years of the quad, tell us, Shirley, how many days on the water per year, the first year, the second year, third year, fourth year, on an average?
So the first year is always a little bit unique to the individual athlete. For someone like Paige or Caleb who went to the Rio Games, taking that first year off is sometimes very important for them, and they both did. But if someone's new and just starting out, they've got to use that first year as a catch-up and do the hard years.
So how many days for them, first year?
I would like to think they'll be in the high 100s on the water. And when it comes to year 2 and 3 of the quad, they're the real grunt years, the big years that you got to be campaigning. And that would be north of 180 days training.
For years 2 and 3, and the fourth year?
And the fourth year, then of course it's tailored for you, leading into obviously peaking at the Olympic Games. And it's a much shorter year, but it'd be probably in the vicinity of around 100 to 120, depending on the individual athlete, to make sure they're peaking at the Games.
And lastly, about individuals, give us a short day in the life of an Olympic athlete in the fourth year and where you are.
Okay, so I may as well tell about my day.
Day in the life.
I would wake up in the vicinity of 5 to 5:30 in the morning. I would start off with doing my strength work. Being an old man, I would have to work on my core strength, my glutes and my shoulders, because they're all the pumping, to make sure they all stay together. I would normally, sometimes that involved going to the gym, sometimes it was a home fitness, and then quite often it'd end up with some cardio work, which is normally on a bike, because running hurt my back. Then I would normally try to have breakfast, certainly if I was back at home, have breakfast with my wife, and then send her off to work at 7:30, 8 in the morning, and then I would jump in the car and head down to the yacht club. I would be at the yacht club by 8:30, 9. Sometimes I'd drop into the physio on the way if I was in a rehab scenario, and sometimes it was self-treatment, or sometimes it was getting treatment on the way, and then we'd be at the yacht club around that 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and we'd normally launch more or less straight away, 20 to 30 minutes later, and we'd go and spend 2.5 to 3 hours out on the water. The coach would tow us to the area, or depending on the wind and the conditions we're looking for, to maximise that time. And we'd keep a very intense program that whole time. If we were, losing our game or tired or whatever, we'd stop the session to keep them short and sharp. We'd come back ashore, 12:30 for lunch, and spend 2 hours on the shore for lunch, maybe a little bit of logistics, sometimes a little lie down and a sleep, doing very much that swimming training, with a sleep in the middle, and changing equipment. It allowed us to test equipment different in the second part of the day. And then launch again around about that 2:30 mark, 2:30 mark, and go and do another 2.5 to 3 hours session on the water, and back ashore for a quick debrief. Sometimes physio on the way home, or certainly you'll be doing stretching while you're debriefing, to further recovery once you get home, to have dinner with my wife and maybe walk the dog. And that was a day in a life.
Going to bed at what time?
I was an early to bed sort of person, so around about 9:30 plus or minus.
Great. Another question from the audience, Mark Lambros.
Yes, a quick commentary and then the question. Sailing is a little bit different than most sports. I find that in the Olympics, if you're 18 or 20, that's your last chance. You're going to have the win to gold. You're finished. Professional sports, by the time you're 30, you're over. Sailing, you can be like Ron, beat everyone, to perhaps yourself, that you feel that you can beat everyone else in the world to this day.
We're going to be on the same boat tonight, so we're going to win together.
And so at what age, when you look at a kid, 14, 16, 18, and do you say, well, you've got the potential to be a great sailor, and you can campaign for the Olympics? At what age do you look at someone and say, they're too old, they're finished, they're not going to make it?
Thank you, Mark.
Oh, it's a very individual question, and as you said, sailing, you can get to the Olympic Games. That's what we're talking about, through many different paths and many different age brackets. I didn't start campaigning until I was 25 years old, after I did my college education, after I started a professional career. that's when I started campaigning. So, and I was 36 and 40 when I won medals at the Olympic Games. With a class that, or certainly the position within the boat that I was doing, had a lot of physical pumping, off-wire pumping upwind and pumping of sails downwind, all within the rules. So it was very much a physical position within the boat. So it's a really hard one to answer clearly. You know, when I look at the US sailing team now, we've got Chris Rast in there, who's 45, 46, 45 years old. Bora Galari's in his 40s. He's in there. And then we've got Ryder Gibbs at 21, a part of the team. And Haddon Hughes down around that age as well. So there's a huge age gap there. But some kids know in their early teenage years that they're going to be on that pathway. And you look at probably a current example now. I know they're both 18 years old, but Jack Parkin and Wiley Rogers won a Youth Worlds medal 2 years ago, and now they're in the Olympic classes. You know, they're fighting for it. But then you've got the Chris Rast and the Bora Galari still in it. Kevin Burnham won his gold medal at 47, only 2 months before he turned 48 in the Athens Games. And Paul Forrester, I think, was low 40s at that time. So I always say, normally what you lose in your muscle, you gain in this muscle, which obviously is pretty powerful in our sport. So it's a really hard balance to know where that fulcrum point is. But I think the Olympic classes are getting, and I guess that's just evolution generally, they're getting more physical, they're getting more demanding. So without that physical component or that physical ability, that's going to be your first inhibitor that comes along. But with sports science these days, as we all know, athletes are going longer. Look at Tom Brady. He's late 30s, still playing. That was for you, Will.
So welcome again to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, live from St. Francis Yacht Club. Our speaker today is Malcolm Paige, 7-time world champion and 2-time gold medalist. And we want to thank especially our friends at Sailing Illustrated for helping us with the Facebook live stream, from which we have a couple questions. Julia, a question from the Facebook audience.
We do. Kristen Lane has a question for Malcolm, in which she says, talk about the sailing conditions specific to San Francisco Bay and how you see that as a great training ground for upcoming Olympic Games.
Obviously, the sea breeze is strong, and that teaches you resilience. The water is cold. That teaches you resilience. There's great white sharks out there. That teaches you to keep it upright. And of course, you can find those different conditions in such a close facility. From one launching area, from Treasure Island, you can find all those different features or capabilities in a very short time. It's a special place.
We talked about individuals in Olympic programs. Quickly now, a summary of what it takes as a team. Describe quickly the British team. What are the components? How many people are on the team? We've heard they have a $55 million budget. Then I want to talk about the American team and so on. First, the Brits. What's their team look like?
So the Brits, it is... let me answer from that money perspective. Yeah. That $55 million, and I know when I had that chart, that could be quite deceiving. That $55 million services the whole high-performance pyramid. So they really do reach right down to that Optimus big age athlete and start to influence that athlete at that age. So you might almost say they have some inefficiencies only winning 3 medals in Rio and spending that much money, but actually they are creating an amazing pipeline right from that bottom of that high-performance pyramid all the way up. They have and this is not an exact number, but it's somewhere around about 80 to 90 athletes on their British sailing team, plus the development program. So in many ways, it's not that big once you get to the top of the pyramid. It's maybe quite similar to even countries like Australia or USA. That would be about how many athletes we would have in our eyes. But they have been doing this for such a long time now in that sustainable model that they have them queued up like there is no tomorrow. And to me, the best example is the Finn program. They have won the last 5 gold medals since 2000, 3 different athletes, multiple different coaches. But they have a team that works together, shares the knowledge, passes it on down, and then, you know, when someone retires or moves on or is not good enough, then that next person takes the mantle and gets the job done. But these 2 boys are going to take it off them in a couple of years' time.
So in the U.S. team, give us a quick org chart. What are the important roles? Who's on it? How many weather people? How many training people? How many analytics people?
So we're very small compared to, I'd say, other comparable countries. To me, the most important thing is always the athlete. But we have currently between full-time employed coaches or contract coaches that are full-time working with our team. Off the top of my head, I think it's in the vicinity of 6. And obviously we've got Leandro Spinner, who runs our development program as the sort of the head coach, manager, director of that area. And then we have a lot of contract coaches that work in that area. A lot of expertise that we bring in, and that's through some of our sponsors, like Quantum Racing, that helps us bring some of those quantum experts in and sharing knowledge with these kids and inspiring them for the future. From a tech standpoint, we only have 2 full-time staff, then a fair few contractors that we bring in. Many of those contracts, and a lot of it might be value in kind that they're giving to be working with this national team, and of course for the Olympic glory, side by side with us. And as we sort of mentioned before, we've got about 5 staff members that sit back in the office behind our computers or travelling the world, being the team behind the team, working for them in those different areas. You know, Jim from a business standpoint, Meredith and Kate from a management standpoint, and I certainly focus very much on the performance. You know, Martha for the commercial and marketing, with Will on the communications. So we're a very small team in comparison to some of the others. And when I was just at Hyères in France for that World Cup event just recently, I remember going to the team leaders meeting every morning and looking around and thinking, well, you know, especially in Europe, you know, the Europe teams, it's not hard for them to travel, but they brought in a lot of support staff. But we're going to be leaner, we're going to be meaner. Obviously, we've got some funding constraints that we're obviously addressing as we're going forward, but in comparison, we've got a lot of funding constraints compared to those other countries, so we have to do it a little bit smarter and do it in a way that works for America too.
So the number 1 team is spending $55 million. What's our target for this next quad?
So we're looking to get close to double what we had last quad.
40?
So no, it's into the 20s.
Yeah, so you're in 20 now. You're going to double 20? What are you saying?
We're looking for this quad to double last quad to get to around about that 20 mark, and then it'll be hopefully triple by the next one, and then quadruple by the one after. And that's the target that we think we can have as equally, or I would like to think better, system than the Brits. They're their pin-up model at the moment, and have an amazing sustainable model that will deliver, like we showed on that chart, you know, in 1964 and 1984, how we consistently bring medals. Of course, sport, and we'll have our bad games, but we'll still come away with medals. And when we have our good games, we wipe the floor.
And source of funding would be corporate? What source of funding?
Anyway, please.
What's likely? What's likely?
Our first and most successful way that we've achieved in the last year or so has been through private donation directly. To do a corporate program takes a lot longer to get that across the line, but it's certainly something that we're looking at as well. And I'm actually happy to report, as of just over a month ago, we got our first $1 million donation to the team, which was a coup, and hopefully not the last one.
Bravo, bravo. And another question from the audience.
Yes, I'm a dual citizen, both U.S. and Australia, and learned to sail at Balmoral Sailing Club in Sydney. So welcome to San Francisco. How are you handling the shift from defending Australia to now leading the charge against Australia in the world, leading the U.S. charge?
I got a lot of support from everyone back in Australia. We taking on this role was a lot of compliments from I guess friends, family, people I didn't know even, saying congratulations, and it was a great opportunity for me, and a great opportunity is what America brings. I must admit, some people do have trouble understanding me sometimes. People don't always understand when I say prawn instead of shrimp, fall instead of autumn, and so on. But generally, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful being here, and obviously, my wife and daughter here as well, and it's been great. The American people have been super warm and welcoming, and been felt very much at home. I'd also say that certainly, my Olympic sailing committee, the board I report to, they've been also very demanding while they've been supportive. But that, to me, is perfect too, because I know I'm a high-performance guy and like to win as well. So that is great to know that I have that support and that focus from them as well. So it's been very positive. And I know I said it before, and I want to say it again. The opportunity in this country is like no other. It could really go back to like in the 60s, 80s and early 90s, how USA dominated sailing. And I just mean Olympics. I mean, they dominated sailing. That's what I grew up in, knowing what the America's Cup was like, seeing the Olympic athletes go and win medals all the time. And whatever discipline of our sport it was, USA was there as one of the dominant countries.
Another question from the audience.
Yeah, I'm Dick Loomis, past Commodore at Richmond Yacht Club. Questions about FAST. There's a few of us, Paul Heineken, Kimball, Russ Silvestri. We've been meeting in the last couple of years, kind of discussing Bay Area sailing. At our last luncheon about 4 weeks ago, was over at Encinal Yacht Club, and Paul talked about FAST. And my question then was, and I'm going to reiterate again, how can the rest of us in the Bay Area, other yacht clubs, Richmond in particular, that's where my heart is, how can we help?
For starters, the question is a great start. And,
Thank you.
And,
Sir.
And I really do see FAST as a culmination of the whole Bay Area. It's the people around this great city that have dreamt this. And it was... We came over here for the foundation fundraiser last year in March. And the next morning we had a little meeting, and I was sort of pitching, saying, hey, it'd be great if you guys get a youth development site and something like that. And they're all nodding in the room. And little did I know, 6 weeks later when I came back here, they presented to me this FAST concept and really taking it to another level. And they blew my socks off. And it was typical San Francisco style. They took it to another level. And to me, it's the whole community out here that's doing that. And I see, remember I talked about culture as one of the most important things. I see the sailing community out here being able to lead this culture. I talked about leading athletes. You're going to be able to sit there arm in arm with me and help be able to lead this new generation. I'm going to say new, it's maybe some of the old athletes, but a new way of doing it and taking them forward to be successful. Sometimes it might be running races for them. Sometimes it might be coming to a fundraiser for them. Sometimes it might be letting them use your showers at the yacht club and train out of there, as Caleb and Luke are currently at the moment. And this is going to show the way for the rest of the country. Because if we can unite, well, it's 46,000 US sailing members that are out there, and I think it's in the vicinity of 1,500 yacht clubs, sailing clubs around this big country. If we combine that power, that'd be awesome.
Dick, also the St. Francis Sailing Foundation has an auction every March. You can come and be part of that big gala and contribute that way, because as we've all heard, the winning team is outspending us quite a bit. And given the size of America and the gross domestic product, there's no reason why that should be. Another...
And the Richmond Yacht Club Foundation is doing a fundraiser for David Liebenberg and Sarah Newberry on June 9th.
Wonderful. Perfect. Thanks.
Perfect.
Yes, another question from the audience.
One moment. Test it. All right, awesome. Thanks for coming out today, Malcolm. I'm Will. I just wanted to ask, seeing it so fitting, kiting's now in the Olympics, and kite racing was born at this club about 10 years ago. Do you think you guys will have any room for a kite launch for us down there?
I don't understand exactly what you need from for a kite launch, but hell, yeah, of course. and the most, but it's a perfect opportunity too, because the Youth Olympic Games are going to be in Buenos Aires, Argentina this year, and it's going to be the first time that kiting, boys and girls, are going to be represented at the Olympic Games, the Youth Olympic Games. And as we just heard on Monday afternoon, there's going to be a mixed kiting event for 2024 as well. So that's very much in our vision of how we've got to understand kiting a little more, from my perspective. I want to learn how to kite and foil in the one day. So if someone can take that mission on, I want to come and partner with them one day and learn. But we've got to get onto it straight away, because the other countries I'm sure are already doing the same as well. And 6 years, as I said, 6 years is not very long to build an athlete. So, and that's how long we got to the 2024 Olympic Games. And we've already had kiting involved in some of our camps here and there across the last year and a half. So that has already been, those connections have already happened. And we are going to have, not only at the Youth Olympic Games, but we're also going to have American representatives at the combined Olympic class World Championships in Aarhus, Denmark later this year in August. There will be kiting on display, men and women kiting on display there as well. It's American athletes there doing that. So, and we'll be supporting from a federation standpoint, from a US sailing standpoint, supporting a coach there to help those groups of people.
So thank you for attending the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon at the St. Francis Yacht Club. Our guest today has been 7-time world champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and the chief of the United States Olympic sailing team, Malcolm Forbes. Thank you very much, Malcolm. Meeting's adjourned. Good on you, Nate.
I do have my medals.
Come and take a look at some Olympic medals, everybody.